Okay, here we are. The COVID-19 lecture. There's 3 people, not 4 people. I'm waiting for what's in. Good, I'm recording. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right, hi everyone.
Hi, Dr. Redstone.
How's it going?
I'm COVID free on this wonderful Thursday
Lucky.
day.
So yeah, let's wait for a few more people where I'll just say some housekeeping things and then we'll get to stuff. I'm better than direct message. So I hope you don't mind if I read this out loud, but thank you for asking. I'm okay at the moment. I'm not, it's not as bad as the first time. The first time was like April 2020, and my partner and I got it, and it was like during the Delta wave, before either of us had got any vaccines. And that was brutal. Like I was like sick for 2 weeks straight, and then exhausted for a third week after that. I was just exhausted the first 2 weeks too, but just sick and exhausted for 2 weeks, then just exhausted. And it was terrible. Our taste of smell and our sense of taste and smell got all messed up. Brain fog, as you can see, I have a little of that now. It reminded me of when I was a kid and I had the chicken pox, actually. Felt like that, like a severe viral infection. But now it's a lot more cold-like. I'd say the one thing that really sucks is it's absolutely destroyed my sleep schedule. So I did not sleep until like 9 a.m. in the morning. I couldn't fall asleep. And then I thought,
Did you have an out-of-body experience?
No, unfortunately, no.
Uh-huh.
I was like, come on. I was like, maybe I could will myself to sleep though, and it didn't work. I just kind of kept getting up and trying to do something to make myself tired, have a snack or read something, and nothing.
How many vaccine boosters do you have, or vaccines do you have?
I have the 2 ones plus the booster.
Okay.
So 2 vaccines, 1 booster plus immunity from the first time. So I guess I'm doing all right, really.
Yeah.
But it sucks because it really the lack of sleep really threw a wrench in my prep work. So for today, it's going to be kind of like informal seminar style. I think the best thing would be to just talk about maybe some of the readings, or if you have questions about the essay assignment. I know that I haven't got your feedback to you yet, but anything like that, I think we might as well use an hour and a half, maybe 2. We're not going to go the whole length, but we'll just use this time as best we can. And I'll share my screen in case I want to bring up one of those readings, because of course I don't have any slides. Oh, excuse me if I sniff, if I'm sniffling. Apologies for that. Okay, come on in, Alan. So I guess where we left off, talking about dreams and a little bit about out-of-body experiences. I'm not sure who's had a chance to read Levitin and LeBerge. It's actually been a little bit since I read it. Okay. Now, one claim that they make, I believe, if memory serves, is that most out-of-body experiences are probably dreams or something like a dream. So a sleep paralysis sort of state. I was thinking to myself how perhaps there are multiple kinds of out-of-body experiences, because some people report an out-of-body experience, not when they're falling asleep or waking up, but say during moments of peak performance. And this is something that maybe this is a little uncharitable, but that's something that Levitin and LeBerge don't really talk about. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. So have any of you heard of those cases where, oh no, oh, okay. So sometimes, yeah, I think this happens in what you could characterize as a flow state or peak performance, right? I tried to think of a better example. This is the only example that my brain was like, talk about this for some reason. But I remember watching this old documentary on it was called, I think it was called Under the Mat. It was a documentary on professional wrestling that came out a long time ago. And so they're interviewing the professional wrestlers. And I don't know, I'm not an avid fan of wrestling, but I do know of the cage match, the famous cage match between Mick Foley and The Undertaker. And so they're interviewing The Undertaker in this documentary, and he talks about having had an out-of-body experience in this cage match. It was like hell in a cell, or there it's crazy. There's cages, but there's also ladders and chairs, and you can throw chairs at people and throw them off ladders, and it's all, it's choreographed, but it's still dangerous, and yeah, that's right. Okay, so yeah, he threw Mick Foley off of the top into the table or whatever, right? Like, which, even if that's choreographed, I'm like, holy moly, man, that's like a 20-foot fall. That's insane. I don't know, but Mick Foley, you see Mick Foley, and he has like teeth missing and ears missing, and you can tell he's a real he's a wrestler. So Undertaker's talking to the documentary crew like, oh, I remember having an out-of-body experience during this match. Like, it was just such a big, huge event. It felt like he was outside of his body watching himself, which is very interesting. Now, we know that if you're falling asleep, or perhaps waking up from a dream and then falling back asleep again, there is, of course, a chance of either a sleep paralysis sort of experience where that might result in what seems like an out-of-body experience, or perhaps the old hag phenomenon, or alien abductions, something like that. And that's the kind of thing that LeBerge and Levitin are talking about in their quick article here. But there's also those peak performance / flow state sort of things. And I wanted to talk about that briefly, because I think we're pretty familiar with the reasons why somebody might have an out-of-body experience if they had like an episode of sleep paralysis or something, right? It's plausible, or rather it's I guess the more parsimonious explanation is that you're having some kind of dream or sleep paralysis experience, because because The alternative account that your mind actually leaves the body is dualism, right? It's mind-body dualism again, which we've seen is problematic for giving scientific slash naturalistic accounts of things. But why might one have such an experience in a case of peak performance or a flow state? I wonder if any of you might want to venture a guess. It's okay if you want to take a minute and think about it, because it's I have a sort of idea about this, but I'm no expert, of course. And
fMRI studies, I think, show that out-of-body experiences show similar pathway or activation in the brain as somebody or an athlete having won performance or having visualized winning said performance.
oh, really? That's
yeah.
interesting.
I was just reading an article, I remember last night, it was a 24-year-old University of Ottawa student. It was on Gizmodo, so kind of pop media, but she could willingly perform out-of-body experiences like with her dreams. Like, I could send you the link, but she said she went to her professor after a lecture and said, "Oh, I thought everybody could do that."
Oh, that's how so many weird things are identified. Yeah. Not that this person's weird, I'm sure they're not, but you'll hear a lot of times of like people with synesthesia, and they'll go to their prof like, I thought numbers were colorful for everybody or something, right? And the prof is like, nope, it's just you. Like, but congrats, because that's kind of cool. Like, that's really interesting. Yeah, you know what? If you could share that in the Discord, I think that would be really cool for myself and for everyone else. Excuse me, I just have to get some tissue paper before I continue. I'm sorry, I'm just going to step away.
I'm so happy you apologized.
Oh. So I'll have to read that article. Alexis, go ahead.
Yeah, to answer your question about like maybe why the flow state might be like sort of problematic, I guess, in that sense. Is it because it's kind of like an altered state of consciousness, like how we were discussing before? Like how in sensory dampening environments, you can typically, be in a different kind of state of awakening and awareness. Is that
I think, I think that's kind of, that's probably part of the reason, right? Like when you're in a flow state or peak performance, it is kind of like an altered state of consciousness, right? And so I think that's certainly part of it. I think I think perhaps another part of the reason is that what kind of people get into flow states or peak performance, right? Whether it's the Undertaker wrestling, or whether it's like a musician playing a piece, or another athlete, doing something else. I think this probably happens a lot during. I don't think this is something you get with team sports very often. I think this is combat sports and like events where the athlete goes and does their thing on their own. I think it's those kinds of things, or like a musician playing a piece, or there's any number of examples. But the kind of people who tend to get into these states are experts, right? They're like those guys that have got their 10,000 hours in, right? And there's an interesting thing about expertise. Actually, I'll kick this one to everyone in the class. Would anybody like to guess, or if they know, they can tell us what kind of differences you'd see between a novice and an expert? Not necessarily in terms of anything like brain activity necessarily. But what is the difference between an expert and, say, a novice or a hobbyist or an amateur, mentally speaking?
Amateurs tend to get hung up on the little things a lot more than an expert. It's that whole saying, like an expert or master has failed more times than a beginner's even like tried, or an amateur's even tried or began.
That's true.
Yeah.
But then I think of some top chess players who, you know, will blunder, and then, you know, you can see them at the board. What was that one viral clip of a chess match, and a guy blundered his piece and went like, oh, and he just fell backwards in his chair. It went viral recently. But that's true. Experts have probably made a lot more mistakes. But the key thing really has to do with memory. Does anybody know? So if we were to compare an expert and a non-expert brain, or not even a brain, but just if we were to ask them, what might some of those differences where memory is concerned be?
It might have to do with things being like more muscle memory than, because they've, like you're saying, practicing for so long, maybe that they're so not, they don't have been consciously aware of what they're doing sometimes, maybe like they're just doing it because they've practiced it for so long, it so becomes so common for them.
That's exactly right. And Michaela got it in the chat as well. They have so much experience they can perform actions without thinking. That's right. We call this automaticity, right? And the reason why experts are automatic like this is because an expert has all of that knowledge in long-term memory, right? It's rapid and automatic, and it's almost like it's intuitive. It's been done so much that you're just like boom, 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 boom. I can just do whatever, right? And that's not true of novices. So, for example, well, let's get back to chess, because chess is a very good example. Like, if I play chess, I gotta think like, okay, I'm gonna do this opening, and then oh no, he's not obliging my opening. Shoot, okay, now I gotta think of something else. Maybe the knight goes here, and you know, I gotta think about everything. But you know, if you're like Magnus Carlsen or somebody, you just remember so many frickin' chess games that you're able to respond with a lot less conscious thought. And that goes for experts across many different domains. And I think that's because, so say you're in a flow state or peak performance, and you're kind of like on automatic pilot if you're an expert, right? It's kind of like if you drive, maybe you've had this experience where you're driving and you're just kind of like in the zone, or maybe you've zoned out, and all of a sudden you're where you were going, like, oh, I'm here now. And it was like the trip went by, like it's just gone. It just happened like snap of the fingers. So that's like a flow state. And that's the kind of state that maybe some of these elite athletes or other kinds of experts enter into. And because we're kind of on automatic pilot, and there's no need to consciously control things, or at least not as much. Consciousness kind of just goes away or changes and gets us into that altered state where some people, for some reason, seem to see themselves from the outside. So I don't have the full story for you, right? But I do think that expertise and automaticity is a big part of it for when you are, if you experience an out-of-body experience when you're not falling asleep or waking up, if you're like an elite athlete or something. I think probably automaticity has something to do with it. Excuse me. Oh. But what about if you're dying? Right? Sometimes people are in the hospital on the operating table, and they'll report a type of out-of-body experience, which may also coincide with near-death experience. So again, you'll be watching yourself from above. Now, these are tricky because when you're anesthetized for surgery, you are not conscious. And yet we have these reports of seeing the surgery from above or something like this.
Well, I mean, again, depends on the surgery. Like if you have open brain surgery, they have to keep you awake. You know, they just pump full
That's
of
true.
drugs. Yeah. And then
That's
also
true.
like when I had my knee surgery last year, they gave me the option of either being put under or having a spinal tap. Where they just literally just numb like the lower part of my body, which I did not want because I'd be distracting the surgeon so much. I didn't want
Yeah,
to
I'd want to
watch it.
ask, like, what's happening? What are you doing there? Like, does that go that? Are you sure that goes there? Like, yeah. Matteo, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember a couple. Oh, this was a while ago. I read about this like study where they were trying to like prove. I think it was out of body experiences or something like that, and they would like have people like going into surgery. They would put like photos near the top of the room, like on a shelf, like up high where no one could see, and then like they would ask people who came like back from surgery like what they saw, like if they saw anything and like if they saw the photos and stuff like that.
Yeah, they've done similar ones, similar things with dreams, too, like in the sleep lab. I think Stephen LaBerge has actually done something like that, where there'll be a target somewhere. And the idea is, of course, if you've really left your body, then you're actually going to see the real thing and accurately report it, right? Although there's a confound that parapsychologists would have to deal with. If you believe that the soul can leave the body, you may also believe in telepathy or clairvoyance. So say I got a photograph in the next room, and I go in the sleep lab and I accurately report that photo. I mean, chances are low, but let's say I do. And you're a parapsychologist. What do? Do you say the soul left the body, or do you say this was dream telepathy or dream clairvoyance, right? Checkmate, parapsychologists. So, but it's true. The idea would be like if you were actually leaving the body, then you could accurately report things. And
what was the early statistic on people who believed in ESP and parasite? It's like something like 57 or it's higher than that for a percentage of people.
It was high. I don't quite remember off the top of my head, but for those Gallup polls and in the UK, the surveys in the UK, it was, I think the number of people who believed in at least one paranormal phenomenon was quite high. And ESP, I'm not sure if they believe in psychics or anything like that, but of course there are those who are like, well, psychics aren't real, but sure, maybe there's some weird freaky ESP things that happen sometimes, right? Which would be an interesting thing to study. As far as I know, a lot of the polls and surveys on the paranormal just kind of, do you believe in that? Yes, okay, but what? Like, we don't really do deep dives into this stuff, and it would be interesting to do that. Might be a cool honors thesis if any of you are thinking of doing something with math or stats.
Let's bring back Stargate. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, like it wouldn't even have to be as crazily controlled as Stargate, like, you know, but yeah. All right. So
'Cause
I
in the
guess
reading, oh, sorry.
no,
I'll
go
stop
ahead. Go ahead.
interrupting.
I'm
The reading,
actually
it's it. Oh, okay.
I'm not sure where I'm going. So if one of you wants to take the lead for a bit, do it.
Because you made the parallel between people who believe in ESP or phenomenon of that sort with OBEs, and I think in the reading it said something like 5 people at minimum and up to 35 people out of every 100 experience some kind of out of body experience in their lifetime, or they report that. So I was trying to like compare the numbers.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I suspect that some people that everybody's who's that most people who have had an out of body experiences believe in out of body experiences. Not everybody, but most people. However, a lot of people who believe in out of body experiences may not have had one themselves, right? And this is very interesting. I know we didn't have to read Blackmore this week, but Blackmore had an out of body experience in college. And it was one of the things that motivated her to study this stuff. I think it was when she was undergrad, she was hanging with her friends and they were smoking the pot. And she had this out of body experience, which I think is very interesting because this was years ago when cannabis was like nowhere near as potent as it is today. And I've never, I mean, I enjoyed the occasional spliff myself, but I've never had an out of body experience. So it's very interesting to me. Like it's kind of like what I told you a few weeks ago, how I'd like to spend a night at a haunted house. Come on, where are these experiences? I don't believe they're supernatural, but come on, I want one so that I can. Yeah, you ever have an out of body experience on weed? So like I would love to have such an experience, but I think that probably my best bet is sensory deprivation or something, right? But yeah, so it's interesting I bring this up because Blackmore initially, as you know, kind of gets inspired and says, I'm going to study, this is fascinating, I'm going to study this paranormal stuff, be a parapsychologist. And then after years of doing that, 10 years of null results, he was like, you know what, I don't think there's anything to it. I think there's a better explanation for what's going on rather than any sort of psi effect or the soul leaving the body or anything like that. Remember that the brain is like a virtual reality machine. And the representation that it's generating for me right now is generated by the brain based upon what the brain can know and predict about the external world, which is stable. So people have this mistaken idea that I think a lot of people are naturally like naive realists who maybe perhaps because they haven't thought about it very much think of the world they're experiencing as the world, like as the external world, but it's a representation of the external world. So if you have an out of body experience, you might say to yourself, well, clearly I left my body because I had this experience and I saw that. But you have to remember that all of that is being put together by your brain. It's practically impossible, but theoretically possible, that I could, if I was some kind of mad scientist with some kind of brain machine, that I could make you experience anything. I mean, like Hillary Putnam's brain in the vat argument. Does everybody remember that one? Oh, it's a great one. Hillary Putnam was a philosopher of mind, He also did some mathematics and some language. He did some philosophy of language with Saul Kripke, you know, twin Earth, H2O, water is XYZ. And don't worry about that. It's philosophy of language. Ugh. But Hilary Putnam has the brain in the vat thought experiment. So, you know, I have my brain in my skull, which is connected to all of my sense organs, and the world affects my sense organs in such a way that information is delivered to my brain. And what my brain really is not just a world representing machine, it's also a prediction machine. It tries to predict what the world is like. Your brain is like a scientist in your head. It really is. Your brain is always making hypotheses about the world and updating and revising them. So Hilary Putnam says, well, imagine that you were just a brain in a vat, like in a jar filled with liquid, and your brain was plugged in, and there was a mad scientist delivering the same sorts of information, causally affecting your brain in such a way that it caused you to perceive, you know, say, for example, for me, that I'm sitting here lecturing. But actually I'm just a brain in a vat and I don't have a body, right? It's like Rene Descartes' evil genius thought experiment. People, you guys remember that one, right? No? Oh, that's a good one. Well, a little bit. It's okay, because we're going to talk about it later on in the course. I'm actually glad. This is good that people are a little bit less familiar with it, because we're going to read the first two meditations later. But for now, I'll say that the evil genius, or sometimes evil demon, is a supremely powerful being who can manipulate Descartes. You know, Descartes meditating. He's trying to. He's sitting by the fire. He's got his beeswax. He's in his robes, and he's trying to work out what he can know with certainty, right? So, you know, he says to himself, well, I'm clearly sitting by the fire in my robes, and I know that that's real. Or do I? I could be dreaming, right? And I wouldn't know that I was dreaming. Or you know, maybe God could make me be mistaken about things. But of course, God wouldn't do that, because God is perfect. So let's imagine instead an evil genius who can make me believe that 2 + 2 = 5, or that triangles have 4 sides, you know. So he goes through the dream argument, and then to this sort of argument, well, aren't there like indubitable a priori truths, like all triangles have 3 sides and their internal angles sum to 180 degrees? That's an a priori fact, isn't it? Well, sure, but an evil genius could deceive me into believing that if they were supremely powerful. So the mad scientist with my brain in his vat would be like this evil genius, right? He could make me perceive whatever I want. These are two thought experiments that are really great for appreciating what the brain is doing without having to get into all of the dirty neuroscientific details, right? So once you keep that in mind and kind of dispel your naive realism, there's a number of ways you can go from there. You could be an indirect realist. You could be a transcendental idealist like Kant, right? Remember your boy Kant with his transcendental aesthetic. Hell, you could even be an activist, which is weird if you ask me, but sure, why not? And activism is strange. I'm not going to talk about it because it's a little counterintuitive and a little weird. But I think of myself as a mix between like a little bit of indirect realism, a little bit of Kantian idealism, if that makes sense. I kind of hybridize, and I've made my own little pet theory where, you know, stuff exists, sure, but we can't really know about it as it is in itself. That's the Kantian part. We need a mind to perceive it, to understand it, to organize our experience, to give it structure. I don't know if I think that space and time are merely forms of sensible intuition, though. That's the interesting thing about Kant. Space and time are not out there in the world. They're a part of how the mind structures the world, which is really interesting because Kant was doing this shortly after Newton published Principia Mathematica, where time and space are definitely part of the world, right? So I don't know if I can go that far, but anyway, dispel your naive realism is the lesson. And then you will realize that when you have some kind of anomalous experience, like an out-of-body experience, for example, well, it's possible that that was generated entirely by your brain. Your brain is its own mad scientist because it's using its own contents to form this strange anomalous experience. And I think that's really fun to think about. Gosh, you know, I really don't know why philosophers don't talk about this stuff more. I really don't. But anyway, let's talk about astral projection briefly. And then we can talk about the Mandela effect. Should we have a break first, though? What time is it? It's only been a little... Wait, it hasn't even been an hour. Oh, wow, time. Sorry, that's the COVID brain. Yeah, let's talk about astral projection. Astral projection is a similar notion to that of an out-of-body experience, but you're not, it is believed, rather, that you are not leaving your body and just kind of floating around the room. Rather, you are projecting your mind or soul to a different dimension, like a different plane of reality. So, for example, remember our astrology lecture, and we talked about the Pleiades. Somebody brought up the Pleiades as an example of a constellation, the Seven Sisters. Astrologers believe that beings of a higher dimension inhabit this area of space. Oh man, I just remembered, what's her name? She's a channeler. I can't remember her name, but I have to Google this. This is good. She channels somebody called Ramtha. And her name is Myers, I think, something Myers.
JZ Knight.
JZ Knight. Okay, I mixed. I don't know where I got Myers from. Yeah. Boy,
Just close.
That's an interesting pic. That picture's old. She's got an old picture up. But yeah, Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. I believe that Ramtha is supposed to be this ancient human guy, but maybe he's also from the Pleiades. Yeah, she claims to channel a 35,000-year-old being called Ramtha the Enlightened One. Okay, where's Ramtha from? Teachings, religion, or cult? You know, I thought that Ramtha might have been from the Pleiades, but if you don't follow Ramtha, though, you will become the prey of the lizard people.
Alex Jones would have a field day with this.
Yeah, Alex Jones, David Icke, all those guys. Okay, so I'm not sure if Ramtha is supposed to be from ancient Earth or the Pleiades, or probably it's both. Probably like Ramtha is supposed to be from ancient Earth, but received knowledge from the Pleiades or something. Anyway, the Pleiades are important. I think because we can see 7 of the stars from Earth with the naked eye, and 7 is an important number in New Age circles. But you know, I thought I was going to sneeze. But you know, an idea here would be that perhaps you would go to the Pleiades, or sometimes people speak vaguely of vibrations. And higher planes of existence have different vibrations, right? Of course, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, right? Do you, like, the worlds oscillate at a different rate as ours? What does that mean? I don't know what that means, right? That's pseudoscience. It's trying to take a scientific term and use it to make something sound scientific, but it's not. Now, this is really interesting because, well, physicists today do speak of other dimensions. But when they speak of other dimensions, they don't mean this kind of thing, right? Excuse me, I'm going to have to grab some more tissue paper. I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Oh. Oh. Right. So scientists do speak of other dimensions. Who wants to, I mean, maybe somebody among you is familiar with the ways in which physicists talk about different dimensions now. And maybe we could talk about how that's different from the way that people who believe in astral projection talk about dimensions.
I have absolutely no idea what physicists say about different dimensions.
No problem. No problem. Maybe somebody who's familiar with some of the not like literature, like scientific literature, but maybe somebody's read some popular books on like string theory or something. Any string theory proponents in the class? No? Okay. Well, that's fine. There's a couple senses in which I guess we could talk about different dimensions. One is like the string theory one, where so we have 4 dimensions, right? We have forward and back, up and down, right to left, right. We have 3 spatial dimensions, and we also have time, which we're moving in one direction in. So 4 dimensions. But some versions of string theory, for example, will posit additional dimensions. But these dimensions are kind of like folded up and smushed in. And they're so small that they don't affect us at all, and we don't notice them. I'm not going to try and do justice to this because I'm not a physicist, but that's one way that physicists will talk about extra dimensions, is that these dimensions are actually folded up in such a way that strings, which are hypothesized to actually be the subatomic particles, are actually strings vibrating, wrapped up in these little tiny dimensions. So there aren't really particles, there are strings, according to string theory. The problem with string theory is that it's not a theory. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's a theory, but we don't really have ways of directly testing it. Like, right, like to test string theory, you know, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, you know, CERN, it's like the biggest one on Earth. And we can see some pretty cool particles with that. When we smash them together, we can detect, like the Higgs boson was first observed there. So this is a particle that, if I remember correctly, is implicated in giving things mass. So we can see some cool stuff in the Higgs boson, but to see a string, we need like a particle accelerator the size of the solar system. It's just not practical, not a practical engineering undertaking for the human race at this time. So that's one way we could talk about dimensions. Another way we could talk about dimensions is with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, right? Remember, there's a few big interpretations of quantum mechanics. One is that when you observe or interact with something, you collapse the wave function such that those probabilities are the ones that happen and others don't. And on the many worlds interpretation, what this means is that every possible thing that can happen does happen in another universe. So maybe there's a universe where I don't take a sip of coffee right now, but we're not in that universe. I just created a new one. So that's multiverse theory, right? So that's another way we could talk about dimensions. It's very Rick and Morty, right? Multiple timelines, changing dimensions, different versions of yourself, very much like that. Now, both of these are, of course, highly theoretical, and they're not the same kind of thing that astral projectors are talking about when they talk about other dimensions. They rather are talking about what I think is better termed not a dimension, but a spiritual sort of plane or whatever, right? In any case, this is one of the things about believers in the paranormal who support this sort of thing is because they're not using these terms in technically correct ways. It's actually kind of difficult to know what they are actually talking about. So if somebody says there are extra dimensional aliens, well, what does that mean? Are they from a different universe? Are they from a level of reality that we can't see, like with Flatland? Does anybody know Flatland? I'm going to share a Carl Sagan video on Flatland. Daniel, go ahead. Oh, Daniel had his hand up, but now it's down. Well, anyway, I'll give you the brief. Flatland is where everything's flat. There's only 2 dimensions. And then a 3-dimensional object comes and all of the little squares and triangles and stuff in Flatland are freaked out because they can't understand what just happened, right? Okay, perfect. And I'll share a great video by Carl Sagan from Cosmos where he talks about Flatland, and it's good. It's just an entertaining little clip. So I kind of leave, I like to leave astral projection like meh, because it's like, what do you mean by higher dimensions or other dimensions, Mr. Astral projection person? When you can tell me in a coherent way, I'll listen, but I don't know what they mean, right? They don't mean what the physicists mean, and they seem to mean what like JZ Knight or somebody means. Like Flatland but spiritual, where we're all the 2-dimensional shapes and the higher beings are in a different dimension. It's crazy to think about. It's a great thought experiment, but it's not really how physicists use the idea of extra dimensions. So I don't know, thoughts?
I don't even know if we're like close to understanding that. So
Yeah.
It's pretty wild theories out there, but I mean, you can make up anything and sell books off of it. So.
Well, it's interesting because that you mentioned selling books. I'm thinking in fiction, a lot of our ideas about extra dimensions probably come from fiction, like science fiction, and not science, right? Or horror.
Guys,
What's that?
you have guys like Isaac Asimov.
Yeah,
Blur the line between the two, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or or also shoot, what's his name? I don't know why his name is escaping me. Lovecraft. It's the COVID
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, like the old ones, you know, Cthulhu and all those guys. They come from a different dimension, but it's like a dimension you need a portal to get to, not like a physicist's extra dimension, right? Do you know my favorite? I think probably my favorite extra dimensional space in science fiction is The Expanse. Has anyone seen that or read those books? Oh my God, guys. You got to do it. Okay. It's like the most realistic. It's so realistic. Like it's great. The space combat, it's just excellent. It's excellent. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, I think, if you got that. But anyway, the story kind of centers around, you know, you got your ragtag bunch of space people, and it's the 23rd century, it's Earth, and so there's like Earth and Luna, and they're like the dicks, the colonial people. Mars is declared independence from Earth. And then there's the Belters who live and work in space, and they're just like treated like an underclass, you know, complete underclass. They speak with their kind of Creole, which is really interesting because of all the different people who went to space and had to figure out how to talk to each other. And anyway, there's this ragtag group of people, and they discover this molecule that actually came from outside of the solar system, from some ancient unknown supremely powerful race of aliens that is extinct now. And anyway, long story short, without giving too much away, is what this does is, of course, get out of control. It builds a ring out past the orbit of Uranus, and that ring is a doorway to like an extra dimensional space with all these other rings that all lead to other solar systems. And it's ancient aliens, but it's cool, like, because it's sci-fi and it's very imaginative. So that's a really neat extra dimensional space where they it's just like this window, and you know, you're like behind it, you see nothing, but in front of it, there's the door, and you go through it. And sure, it's a portal, but the extra dimensional space is really neat because the alien technology can kind of do whatever it wants with the laws of physics in that space. So that's really cool. I've always liked that, and I think it's like a super imaginative way to use extra dimensions in science fiction. So I highly recommend that show or the books. They're very great. If you like sci-fi, you'll like this.
I think the only visual like representation I've seen about like astral projection and anything like that would be probably just the Doctor Strange movie, Multiverse of Madness. That's like the only one.
Right. Yeah. And even there, it's explained, the upside down, yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I haven't seen Stranger Things, but wouldn't the upside down be that's another dimension, isn't it? Like a demon dimension, and you have to, go ahead, Daniel.
It's another dimension, but it's like one of those cases where the other dimension is like reflected in the primary dimension, right? Like you can find like a shack in the real world, and then you'll find the same shack in the upside down kind of thing.
Like in a mirror darkly kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And see, that's a way of having a dimension that accords with our own intuitions about how space and time and things work, right? But of course, real extra dimensions are like string theory extra dimensions, which are just like, we don't grok those, right? Because we don't live in that scale of time and space. So we don't grok string theory the way we grok the Upside Down or Doctor Strange. But yeah, Doctor Strange was interesting, I was going to say, because the way they talk about magic is like it's all the same. In magic science, it's the same, you know. And I'm like, well, that would be cool. You know, that would be cool. That would make science a lot easier. Right? Think about it. I wouldn't have to, I could be like Full Metal Alchemist kind of like scientist. I can just, you know, easy. Doctor Strange, do some stuff and
Yeah, bring
science.
back my dead mom. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
Or reanimate. What does he do in the most recent one? He puts himself in a dead version of himself, and he's like dead Doctor Strange. Like, yeah, that was interesting.
What?
Yeah, Marvel movies really blur the line between science fiction and fantasy. They're not afraid to do that, and that's fine. Like, I think it's fun to mix genres like that. You know, because you can suspend your disbelief, or if you do believe in that stuff, this is the kind of extra dimensions again that you can grok. It's not like string theory. Okay, so I want to come back and take a look at Liam's paper, which is on the Mandela effect. We don't even have to read it that closely, but it's just a great paper. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. This is one of the papers in my first class. The first time I did this class, Liam got an A+. And he happily agreed to allow me to share this with you. So thanks again to Liam for doing that. Liam would go on to be my TA in philosophy of technology, so that was cool. I got to work with him, and he's a smart dude who writes good papers. So take a look at this paper. I've taken out the comments and corrections, so you may find the odd typo here and there, but we'll kind of go through it briefly after we take a little break. I'd like to take a 10-minute break or so. So why don't we come back at 3:40 and we'll have a look at this paper here briefly. It's not that long. Notice he's just coming in at the word limit. Actually, if you take out the bibliography, this is probably a little bit below the word limit, but it was such a darn good paper that I was like, okay, fine. So if you're a little under the word limit, don't panic. I always say don't go under the word limit under any circumstances. But if you write a really boss paper with like, and you're at 1900 words, fine, you know, that's fine. So let's come back in 10 and have a look at this and talk about the essay. Let's stop, pause the recording. All right. Okay. Speaking of lizard aliens, I was just catching up. This is off topic, but I had to bring it up. But anybody following Alex Jones's defamation trial?
Didn't he have to like pay reparations, but then he couldn't pony up the cash, or he's refusing to do so?
He's trying to declare bankruptcy.
With the Sandy Hook, right?
Sandy Hook, yeah. A bit of the background. Okay, so background is Sandy Hook happened, terrible shooting where lots of children and some teachers were killed. Andrea knows where I'm going with this. Yep. When he realized. So he's been saying that this was a false flag conducted by the Democrats to get rid of all the guns or something, you know, because if the Democrats take your guns, then they can impose tyranny or something, right? Which is just no. So he's saying, so he's been promoting for about a decade this idea that it was all crisis actors. Crisis actors is a term you hear from conspiracy theorists, and what a crisis actor is somebody who's hired to pretend to be a victim of a fake, shooting, terrorist attack, whatever. It's disgusting. But this is what conspiracy theorists say. And Jones has been using that "we're just asking questions" narrative, right, as a defense. But yeah, as Andrea said, he just totally got caught perjuring himself. And it's fantastic. I am here for this. It's like, you guys ever watch one of those reunion specials on RuPaul's Drag Race? And it's great. All the queens are having the drama, and one of them's always in the background with a bag of popcorn. That's me right now. I'm there with my popcorn. I'm here for this. Yeah, Channel 5 must have done something with, I think, was it Uvalde though?
It might, yeah, I think it was Uvalde. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
it might have been
they
like
have-
the NRA too.
But the NRA, I did see that one where they
Yeah.
went to the NRA headquarters. Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of one of the impetus for teaching a class like this. Like, I've known about Jones for a long time. I remember learning about Alex Jones. I think I've told you this before. I remember when Alex Jones was just a crank. It was just a few years after 9/11. And back then his shtick was 9/11 was an inside job. I predicted 9/11. And I'm honestly surprised that this didn't happen sooner. I'm actually surprised that, for example, families of victims of the 9/11 attacks didn't bring a similar suit against Jones, but it didn't happen. It's happening now. And the story behind the perjury is crazy, because he told the judge, "I'm just asking questions. I don't think it's fake. I'm just asking questions. I'm acting in good faith. I don't know about this or that or the other thing," or blah, blah, blah. Jones's lawyer accidentally sent all of his emails and text messages to the lawyer of the Sandy Hook families. That lawyer said, "Hey, you sent me some stuff by accident. What are we doing here?" No response, which means after 10 days of no response, that's now admissible in the lawsuit. And that means that everybody knows that Alex Jones completely perjured himself. So I got my popcorn and I'm here for this. Because the thing is, I've said this before, when it's ghost hunting with your friends, or like UFO hunting, it's no big deal, right? You get a sense of community, you have some fun. The people that join these alt-right circles get that sense of community too, but it's incredibly toxic for themselves and for the rest of society. And it's not like, if I get together with a bunch of friends, like, let's go and see if we can find Bigfoot or something. We'll go camping, maybe bring a camera, maybe we'll find Bigfoot. I'm not like making money off of this, right? I'm just going and screwing around in the woods. But Jones is making so much money from this. And yeah, people like him are bad dudes. They need to be taken away, and they shouldn't be allowed to, to say the things they say. Yeah, freedom of speech is important, but freedom of speech doesn't mean you can yell fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire, right? So I was just scrolling through that, and because it has to do with misinformation and that kind of thing, I thought I'd see who was following it. But yeah, I'm very happy to see this unfolding the way it is, because this guy has been able to spread this kind of nonsense with impunity and profit from it for decades. So that's that. But on a lighter note, we can also talk about the Mandela effect and connect it to alternate universes, alternate realities. Are there lizard aliens in some of them? Maybe. I suppose in all possible, if all possible worlds exist, and it's possible that maybe intelligent life on Earth didn't evolve from primates, but some other creature, who knows? Maybe there's a world with lizard people. I don't know. But we don't have the technology to tell. We can't portal in there and try and see. So the Mandela effect is really cool, and this is Liam's paper on it. He starts out by doing something that's a very good move to do, describing or defining the Mandela effect, first by giving some examples, and then by going to provide some stipulations that have to be met for an instance of misremembering to count as the Mandela effect. So it can broadly be described as possessing a memory of a fact or event that differs from the commonly accepted narrative and the revelation that others possess the same memory. So Liam describes it as collective misremembering. And here are some pragmatic examples that he gives us. This is the main one. There is a paranormal researcher named Fiona Broom who misremembered the president of South Africa dying in prison. He wouldn't have been the president at that time. He went, this is a weird false memory, because he wasn't the president when he was in prison. He was the president after he was in prison, because he went to prison because he was an anti-apartheid activist, right? So she remembered him dying in prison, and other people remembered that as well. She even claims to remember the funeral on television. But of course, Nelson Mandela did not die in the 80s. He died a few years ago now, but it was when I was in grad school, which was certainly not in the 80s. And so this is so Nelson Mandela is the namesake of this phenomenon, because this paranormal researcher misremembered him dying. This is probably one of the biggest ones. The Berenstain Bears, spelled Berenstein. Everybody remembers it being spelled Berenstein, but maybe that's because Berenstain is just an uncommon spelling. So, you know, the brain doesn't take an accurate snapshot of this, right? The brain goes, oh, Berenstein. Yeah, that's like all those other Steen names, like Goldstein or something, right? Yeah, I always did too. But yeah, this Steen or Stein, this just means stone, right? If you took my name, my last name, and put it directly in German, it would be Rothstein, right? It's not, my name's not German, but there are some Rothsteins out there. They exist. There's that Sony Viacom billionaire dude, Sumner Redstone. His family immigrated to America from Germany. They were the Rothsteins. No relation. Our dudes, I think, come ultimately from Devon in the United Kingdom, but I don't know. I've got to do some ancestry stuff here. The memory of New Zealand's landmass being west of Australia instead of east. This is a curious one for me, because I've never got that mixed up. I think this is something to do with where they both are relative to North America. If you're a North American and you think of them as they're both west from where you are. But of course, New Zealand is east of Australia, even though it's west of, where we are right here. This one got me. When I was reading this paper, I was like, yeah, I remember that trailer for Shazam with Sinbad. I remember that. I remember the Kazam one too. But then as I was reading through the paper, I was like, wait a minute, what? There was no Shazam? What? It was just Kazam with Shaq? What? And it got like, I was like, okay, wait, seriously? So that one got me, and it got me as I was reading Liam's paper. I was like, okay, I'm gonna whoa, this is weird, man. So it's unnerving when you realize something you've remembered is completely wrong, right? It's so unnerving. People discuss it on Reddit, of course. Discussions of alternate dimensions or timelines. This is what Liam proposes to the necessary and sufficient conditions for the Mandela effect. The memory must be something of something relatively untrivial, right? Misremembering this morning's grocery list as containing red onions instead of yellow, despite being sure you had seen red on the list, does not seem like grounds to be concerned about the Mandela effect, right? And that's because I think what Liam's going for here is that you need it to be collective, and not just collective but untrivial. It has to be something important. The believer must be convinced about the vividness and correctness of their memory, despite evidence to the contrary and beyond a brief window of time where it could be brushed off as confusion. The Shazam Kazam example is great for this because I remember it so well. I'm like, yeah, there were those two movies, and in each one there's a genie, and one of them is Shaq and the other one's Kazam. There are similar movies all the time. I would tell myself, I'm like, Armageddon, Deep Impact, right? Two very similar movies that came out around the same time about asteroids/comets hitting the Earth. Or Wyatt Earp and Tombstone, two westerns about Wyatt Earp, the old cowboy guy from the OK Saloon or whatever. It's two very similar movies that came out around the same time. So I was like, yeah, sure, Shazam, Kazam, it was just one of those. And there must be a small community of people, perhaps even as small as 2 people, who have the same or nearly the same memory as the believer, down to fine-grained details. Why would we appeal to weird paranormal explanations here? Well, here Liam does something cool where he introduces the uncanny and talks about Neo's experience in the Matrix, where Neo sees the cat, in the first Matrix movie. Oh, deja vu. And there's like a cat that goes by twice, and it's a glitch in the Matrix. So in this novel, John dies at the end, which I haven't read. It uses the Mandela effect as a plot device, similar to how deja vu is used as a plot device in the Matrix. So that's really cool. And both of these help us to understand this uncanny quality of the Mandela effect. Again, as I was reading this, I was like, but Shazam was a movie. But no, I checked. Yeah, Keanu's great. Keanu Reeves. Whoa. What? He's just Keanu. I would watch any movie where Keanu's dialogue is all just one word responses.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Just
Yeah.
excellent.
Oh. Or have you guys seen the trailer for the latest John Wick movie?
No.
It's great. Like, exactly what he's gonna say. Like, Lawrence Fishburne's like, "Are you ready, John Wick?" And, yeah. Like, just, it's great. Oh, I love Keanu Reeves. And he's such a nice guy. Like, he buys stuff for all the technical people and the grips and all the PAs. He'll like buy them all watches and take them out for lunch. He's like, he just sounds like such a nice guy. Like, man, it'd be cool to like have lunch with him or something. But anyway, Mandela effect. Here we go. The evil demon, or the brain in the jar, brain in the vat. The uncanny feeling leads some Mandela effect proponents to claim that their timeline has been altered, or that they have been transported to another dimension. And this is true. I had a few students writing about this this year. When I first taught the class. And at the time, there were a lot of what I would call paranormal or new age trends going viral on TikTok. There were claims of reality shifting. It was just called shifting, I think. And manifesting was another big one. So these were claims that were going viral on TikTok. So that's the idea. So what is going on here? Well, one of these people who thinks that I've been transported to another dimension, they would say, well, you didn't misremember the movie Shazam, but now you're in a universe where it was Kazam instead of Shazam. And maybe in this universe, I don't know, Sinbad was busy, so they got Shaquille O'Neal to do the movie or something. I don't know, right? But that's the idea, is that, oh, maybe you've hopped timelines. But what about the principle of parsimony, right? How the heck am I supposed to have switched timelines? Right? Like, I don't have a Rick and Morty portal gun that I can just zoop and go somewhere. How could this happen spontaneously? Is it like Spider-Man, like where Doctor Strange screws up the magic spell and all the dimensions start bleeding into one another? Like, I mean, how is this supposed to work? There's a heck of a lot of unwarranted assumptions, right? So what's this better explanation? Well, Liam argues in the rest of the paper that really the best explanation is a collective false memory. And what he does here is really cool when he talks about I'm actually not sure how to pronounce this name. I want to say Michelin or Michelin or Michaelian, or I'm actually not sure how to pronounce that. So I'm sorry about that if I'm saying.
Michaelian?
Yeah, Michaelian, Michaelian. Man, some names that are very different, I get it, but sometimes I don't. So I don't know this one, but here Liam kind of goes over some interesting things about memory, right? Memory is first, before it's memorized, we have a mental representation, and then that gets encoded. And this is what neuroscientists will say as well, that this is kind of maps on with their technical nomenclature too. Encoding is when the thing is put in memory. Retrieval is when you take it out of storage. So once it's encoded, it's in storage, and retrieval is when it's retrieved. And a trace, which is the causal connection between the former and the latter. You can think of this in terms of like mentalistic terms if you want to, or you can think about it in terms of like implementational details, like neural connections. And it really gets back to the idea of Hebbian learning that I've mentioned in previous classes. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Well, these neurons that have wired together, that's your memory trace. And you can easily recall a memory by activating that trace. But memory is not perfect. Memory is not like a photograph. Memory can change, and memory also, according to this person, memory can also generate beliefs and justifications for those beliefs, not just raw memory of things having happened. We can even have collective memory, according to Michaelian person, which he argues is distinctive phenomenologically speaking from individual memory. It's different. Remembering something collectively, what it's like to remember something collectively is different than what it's like to remember something on your own. That's what this means phenomenologically, right? Appearances, what it's like, what's it like to be, that kind of thing. So we shouldn't think of collective memory as like a whole society is remembering or anything like that, but rather, you know, within smaller groups. In the case of the Mandela effect, any one of the examples, maybe these smaller groups might just be the people on the Reddit channel, right? Or like families, you know, here we got married couples, moms and their kids might misremember things. I think a mom and her kid, maybe, I mean, hey, when I was a little kid, my mom read to me before bed. And sometimes we read Berenstain Bears, right? And what if my mom, even though it says Berenstain, was just like, let's read the Berenstein Bears. Well, that's what I'm going to remember, right? So there it is, collective between, like, I don't know, like my mom, me, and my sister, maybe. We maybe all collectively misremember it as Berenstein rather than Berenstain. And it's not completely out of the question that we would not be the only people to do that. And so, boom, collective misremembering, right? This part here, I remember leaving a comment like, collective memory may have emergent properties. This is, I don't know what this means. An emergent property, emergence is like when something is greater than the sum of its parts, when complexity arises out of simplicity. And I'm not sure what Michelin means here. I think what Michelin probably means is that there's an element of the extended mind hypothesis to all of this, which makes collective memory a different sort of animal than individual memory. The extended mind hypothesis, by the way, is this idea that cognitive processes are offloaded into the world. So what's an example? I'm going to sneeze. I don't know when. Ugh.
You can do it.
I can do it. It's going away now, but oh. So the extended mind, right? Has anyone heard of this, by the way? It's pretty cool. It's another way of thinking about the mental, where I'm not just my cognition isn't just in my brain, but rather cognition is kind of extended out into the body and into the world. The very first example comes from a paper by Andy Clark and David Chalmers, which is called The Extended Mind, and they use the examples of Otto and Inga. Inga wants to go see the exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So she commits the address to memory and she goes there. Otto has Alzheimer's, so he can't remember, but he has a notebook, and his notebook functions as a sort of external memory. He can't remember things over long periods of time, but if he writes them down in his notebook, it basically acts like a memory. And functionally speaking, they argue there is no difference between Otto's notebook and Inga's neural representations. So that's the extended mind. Another often cited example would be the bartender, right? Or you can think of, or a server. You know, when you go to a restaurant or a bar, and if you've got a bartender or a server who is an expert, they don't even need to write anything down, right? Have you seen that? Have you been to a nice restaurant? Yeah, I do it. Like my girlfriend, her sister's a bartender in Toronto, and she's really good at it. Like, she's like an expert, and you know, she can take a big order, but she's not just memorizing a list of drinks. You know, as the order's coming in, you know, I want 2 beers, a margarita, a shot of tequila, and a glass of water or something, right? All of those go in different glasses. So as the order's coming in, she's just pulling the glasses out. So now you don't have to remember. You can just go, oh, these glasses are for beer. And this is a stout glass, and this is the glass we use for ale. So I can easily remember that Josh wanted a Guinness for himself and a pale ale for his buddy, right? And the margarita glass looks like a margarita glass, so that's easy to remember. And a glass of water comes in a crappy little plastic glass. So that's how they do this. It's offloading your memory into the environment. Maybe this is like that somehow. I think that's what Michael, what's his face is saying, but I'm not sure. This model allows for memory contents to be less than exact. It is smart, yeah. And we do this all the time, you know. I used to do this at Tim Hortons. People would come in with very large orders, and but all the cups were just different sizes, so I could just pull out the cups, and then when I'd look at, oh, there's an extra large, a large, a medium, and another large, I'd remember. It would just pop back into my head. A waste of my brain power, if you ask me. But so it's possible that rather than holding a selection of fine-grained memories in storage at once, the brain just holds various properties in storage which can misfire at the point of retrieval. This helps to explain why one could remember the film Kazam with Shaq as Shazam with Sinbad, right? The film titles sound the same. They're only one letter apart, or two letters technically, right? Kazam, Shazam, right? They both star bald black male actors, right? And this could be I've got to admit my cognitive bias here, where, you know, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, where, you know, most people were just white. And my face prototype could have been affected by that, such that, I mean, it's I'm kind of ashamed to admit, but I might have just got these two people mixed up, right? Because of my what we call exposure. If you need lots of exposure to prototype faces to get better at recognizing faces from an out group, right? So in my case, I might have just confabulated between Shazam and with Shaq and Sinbad, even though if you showed me Sinbad and Shaquille O'Neal, I'd be like, oh, those are two different people. I mean, look how tall Shaq is. He's enormous, right? So that's possible. And that's something Liam doesn't really consider that. It can be, I guess, a bit of a touchy subject, I suppose, but it seems plausible that I could have totally just mixed up those two people, because to me, with my inappropriately tuned face prototype, I guess I just mixed them up. So my bad. Although I will say, in my defense, I have gotten all kinds of folks from all kinds of different backgrounds mixed up before as well. I've gotten plenty of white people mixed up too. I'm not sure why. I think maybe I just don't look at faces close enough. So that could be like that. That might work here. Can that explain other instances of the Mandela effect, though? Like the Berenstain Bears? We've kind of already, I think we may have already. Oh, Daniel picks people out by hair. Well, if you pick people out by hair, well, at the time, Shaq and Sinbad were both bald too. So if you're just going from the head, you know. And when I think back on it, phenomenally speaking, my memory of the trailers were like, I thought I remembered two different trailers. Like, see, this is weird. This is messing with my mind. Like, I remember, like, Sinbad doesn't look like Shaq, though. He's, you know, and Shaq is so huge. Like, I don't know. This is messing with my mind. But yeah, you can pick people out by hair. A lot of people who have, like if they have prosopagnosia, for example, which is face blindness, they'll use things like hair or shoes or sound of the voice to recognize people. So anyway, you know, just briefly, I think this is really cool. I'm not going to go through all the details here because this is a short paper and you can read it. Do you remember the movie that, oh, even leading questions. Do you remember the movie Shazam with Sinbad? Can spark the memory and involve the imagination. That could also be what happened. Maybe one time someone asked me, like, remember that movie Shazam with Sinbad? And I mixed it up. My brain imagined something and I mistook that for a memory. That's also something that can happen. The point here is that what Liam does in his paper is that he offers a more parsimonious explanation for the Mandela effect than we're hopping timelines, right? And that's kind of the thing I want you guys to do in your paper, but don't feel like you have to. I know you've already done your proposals, and I have to admit I'm a little behind on getting started because I am running on very little sleep right now. And apologies. But, you know, if you've started out thinking that, oh, I'm going to have to debunk a thing or critically examine a thing, and I tried to make that work, but if you ever want to switch gears a little bit after you get your feedback and talk about, like Liam does this a bit, he brings in a little bit of fiction, right? I've had people write about the Cthulhu mythos before, different folklore. Obviously, I've had people write about the folklore of traditional cultures, religion, stuff like that. Different authors, like that's cool too. If you want to pivot and do something like that, I should have mentioned this before, but that's also acceptable. I guess, has anyone experienced the Mandela effect themselves? I probably asked this already, but again, my brain is not working properly today.
I think for me, one of the biggest ones was the Berenstain Bears, as well as I just went over this with my friends the other day. Do you remember like the logo for like Fruit of the Loom? Do you remember what that looks like?
Oh yeah. I've heard this one.
Yeah.
Does it have a cornucopia or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, right?
No, I don't. It might. I don't think so.
Now I have
Is it like a bowl of fruit or no bowl of fruit or something like that?
Yeah, it's like the
Yeah, it's like that.
cornucopia.
If that brown woven basket is in the picture or not.
Yeah, I have to look it up. Fruit of the Loom. Images.
Get better soon, Rebecca. Laughter is the best medicine, or that's what Patch Adams says. I don't know if that's true, but she has COVID as well, apparently.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks, Rebecca. Yeah, mine was just yesterday. Yeah, I feel like death. Yeah, so yeah, it's good. Do you mind if I ask, have you had it before, or like, or do you have all your shots? Like how's it hanging there? Like, cause like I was saying in the beginning of the lecture, I had mine a few years ago, the first time, COVID, and it knocked me on my butt for 3 weeks. And I'm like a young-ish, healthy-ish person.
I'm just gonna use my mic because the chat's too hard to talk right now.
Sure, yeah.
It's my first time having it, and
Oh, that sucks.
I've only got one vaccine because the vaccine gave me pericarditis. So
Oh no. Oh
Yeah.
no. So
bit rough.
yeah. So are you not able to get a booster because of these side effects from the vaccine?
Yeah, basically, I was told not to go get it, so I think it's
Oh.
hitting me a little harder than most people.
That's a drag, but I'll tell you what worked for me that first time is just a ton of rest and eat when you feel hungry. I went through these like I'm not hungry, I'm really hungry, like phases. So whenever I was really hungry, I would eat and eat and eat because
I've been getting that too.
yeah. And it's so weird. Like 1 minute you have a fever and you're sweating, the next minute you feel fine, and then an hour later you feel like death again. It's
And the chills.
Oh, the chills are, yeah, it's such a weird illness. So definitely stay safe. And
You too.
I thank you. I wish you a speedy recovery. And if anybody gets sick, like, don't worry, you'll get an extension on anything. I'm not mean like that. You know, some professors are like, you know, I remember Sarah, my partner's father, was getting yeah, no, don't do it. Yeah, rest up. Don't go and get COVID. But yeah, my partner's Sarah, her father was doing a master's degree, and at one of his classes, I think he had some stuff going on. It was like personal real life stuff, and it's like, I can't finish this at this time, and it's like, well, too bad. I'm like, what? I like, the way I look at it is like, how many thousands of dollars are you guys paying to be here? If you're just, you know, not showing up and slacking off, sure, whatever, I don't feel bad for you. But if you got some real life stuff happening, I'm not going to be a dick about it. Like, come on. Like, so, you know, don't worry. If you're sick, there's always a way we can figure out accommodations to get the work in and for you to focus on feeling better. And honestly, the reason I'm lecturing today is because it's kind of making me feel better. You know, I always
Takes your mind off of it.
yeah, I always get
Yeah.
I always get a little pep in my step after a class, and I thought I need that right now. So thank you
Inject
guys
that
for
directly in
being
your
here.
veins. Mateo.
Yeah, Mateo, sorry, you've had your hand up for a while there.
Oh,
Go
it's
ahead.
fine. I was just gonna say that I actually have COVID too. So
Hey, everybody's got COVID.
I'm in the
Jeez,
Oh
boat. I'm
no.
in
what
the
is
boat too.
happening here?
Yeah, it's not not fun.
Well, you know, I
COVID.
was thinking that I don't know where I got it. It could have been the grocery store. I went to the grocery store. It could have been this event that I went to with some friends. It could have been that. It could have been the movies, because I went to the movies. We saw Nope. It was really good. But I might have caught COVID. So, you know. And the thing is, in all of these places, nobody's masking anymore. So the first thing we did after that positive test is we ordered a bunch more masks, and I'm not going to screw around with masking anymore. I think that this came out a little while ago, but there have been more COVID deaths in Ottawa in 2022 than there were in 2021. Like, this is not over.
No, operating rooms are closing, like
Yeah.
wait times in emergency are 15, 16 hours now. Like,
Yeah,
I had
it's
a lady
crazy.
ask me, so how are you handling post-COVID? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's not post-COVID. And we have, you know, I don't like to get too political, but we have Doug Ford.
But
Yeah, like, we've got Doug Ford, who won this election because of the complacency of potential voters. Did you see the turnout of the provincial election?
39%.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
pathetic. I'm so upset that people did not turn out and vote, because if they had, I'm confident that this would not be the case. And he's building highways instead of fixing the healthcare system. Like,
Heck yes.
like,
You're
come
goddamn
on.
right.
Come on, Doug Ford. Like at least he's not evil. Like there's evil politicians like Trump, but then there's like incompetent politicians like Ford. You know, and it's
People are waiting for the 10-cent beers. Yeah.
Yeah, bucket beer's never coming back, guys. It's not gonna happen. Like, it's not. You want bucket beer, you have to like make your own beer. That's the only way you're gonna get bucket beer. You know,
You heard it here.
tailgate parties, and people do that anyway. Like, come on. The cops don't bug you if you're not being a dick. Like, if you're not acting crazy, like, they don't want to deal with you. They've got other more important things to do. Like,
Yeah, discretion.
yeah, discretion.
Yeah.
Like, Is it only you? Well, so far it's me and Sarah, my partner. But we let people know, like we let people at our friends from the party thing, we let them know, like, hey, we're sick now. Don't know if we got it at the thing or if we had it before, but if you get sick, get a test. But I am thankful that at least in my case, it's not as bad as that first time. It's kind of like the first time I was sick with it, it was like the worst flu I'd ever had. And now it's like the worst cold I've ever had, with a little bit of fluishness mixed in, you know, because I spike a fever every once in a while. But I hope that everyone else, I hope Rebecca and Mateo, I hope you guys also make a quick recovery, because this really sucks.
Yeah, I've seen people like they're asthmatic now. They have to use a puffer,
Yeah.
which is that's incredibly scary to me.
Yeah. And the chances of long COVID increase with every infection, right? So even if it gets more mild, you get it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you might end up with long COVID, and like nobody wants that. So you know, I'm always telling people, like I was talking to my parents yesterday, and I was like, hey, I've got COVID again, so be really careful, because especially my dad, he's older and he has COPD. Yeah, which is like emphysema and bronchitis combined. So I'm like, you don't want to catch this, because I don't have that and it sucks for me. So you don't want to catch this because it'll really suck for you. So yeah, that's the COVID. It's COVID season.
Have any of you guys lost your sense of smell or taste?
The first time, I think my partner kind of like lost some aspects of taste, and with me, everything tasted like ammonia. Yeah, it was really weird. Like,
I've heard that someone told me it tastes like chemicals. Well, technically
Yeah,
everything's chemicals,
it
but
tasted
Yeah.
like chemicals. Like I'd be cooking. I still remember this. I was cooking something. I think it was like a lasagna thing or a taco thing. I don't know. It had ground beef. I remember that. And usually I like the smell of ground beef because I like beef, and I eat meat. I try not to eat too much of it, but I like it. And oh, lucky. Yeah. If you didn't taste the spice. That's really interesting, because spicy noodles, the capsaicin and pepper actually doesn't affect your taste receptors. It actually affects your temperature receptors. So that's interesting. So COVID must be messing up all kinds of nerve endings in your face.
You should see how hot you can go before you start feeling things.
Go on the like hot wings, you know, with like, that's what they should do. They should do the hot wings thing, but for people with COVID. I bet it would help clear their sinuses out. It would clear my sinuses out to eat some hot chicken wings. But I was cooking this ground beef, and it smelled like I had gotten Windex sprayed in my face, or like I was cleaning out the cat litter box, right? Or like hair dye. You know, some hair dye is really. It was like I was like, why? I've checked the expiry date. The meat's not off. It's still good. And it tasted fine. But the smell, I was like, it smells like a litter box. It was so weird. So yeah. I guess no need to stick around. Everybody's kind of sick and tired and stuff. I'll just say that I'm going to do my best to rest for the remainder of the day, so that tomorrow I can get started on grading, because I need to grade 10 or 20 of these things, so that our TA, Jenna, kind of can get started as well. So I got to meet with Jenna and do some TA housekeeping stuff, but we're both going to get started on this as soon as we can. Alexis, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, really quickly. Because one, I feel so sorry for all of you who are like feeling sick. Like, hopefully all of you feel better soon. I haven't had COVID yet, so like I don't really know what it's like. But
Don't get it, okay? It's bad. Don't get it if you can help it.
Okay. I was just wondering, I know you're talking about grading our papers, which is totally fine, take as much time as you need. I was just wondering, are we going to be getting like the quiz that's upcoming? Would that be covering cryptozoology till now, or
Yeah.
just the cryptozoology and the
Yeah, I'm good. That was the other thing I was going to say, is that while I'm resting and working on papers, I'm also going to try and have the third quiz up for Friday, and I'll keep it open till like Tuesday or whenever. And yeah, it'll have cryptozoology and dreams and kind of like whatever we've covered up till now. There might be a few things from today on it, like I've mentioned a few things on the fly, like the brain in the vat, collective misremembering, you know, because after all, it's not just what's in the readings, but anything I say in a lecture is fair game. So it'll just cover from what was on the previous quiz, everything after that up till now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That's not fair, because only if you know Liam, right?
He has a LinkedIn. I'll Google that name.
Oh, he does have a LinkedIn. I think he's headed off to grad school. I think he's going to York, if I'm not mistaken. And I told him, I said this paper was really good, Liam, like you should publish this or turn it into a thesis or something. And he's like, oh, thanks, but I've got to go to grad school and do a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, fair enough. But you know, just if you're watching, Liam, thanks again for allowing me to use your paper, because it was a good paper. There were lots of good papers in this class. I mean, I don't mean to single Liam out. Jenna, our TA, was also in that first class. She also wrote a very good paper. There were just, yeah, there were probably like 5 to 8 that really stood out, that people really got imaginative and creative with. And that's what I like to see. You know, think of this class, like think of your paper, like, look, I guess when you go to study philosophy, you have those classes where you have to, there's the stuff you have to cover, right? And that can be a little dry. But then there's a class like this where it's kind of like a sandbox and you get to play in it, and you can build a sandcastle, or you can bring some toys in and do some cool stuff. So this is a sandbox class. So, you know, build your sandcastle as magnificent as you'd like it. And if it's a good sandcastle, then I won't knock it over when I'm grading your paper, right? So does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. That's great. Well, I'm sorry that this was kind of all over the place. I'm hoping that I'm able to sleep sometime before the next class, which is on Tuesday. But the cool thing is, for Tuesday, we're going to be covering anomalistic psychology. I'll just say a little bit about this before I go, because it's good. Of course, my computer's slow. Not enough potatoes. Well, doesn't matter. So we're going to talk about anomalistic psychology, which is kind of like, I like to think of it as psychology's course correction on parapsychology. So parapsychology started out as a science. I think it started in good faith by the Rhines. But we've seen how early successful results have not been replicated, and that there was even some instances of fraud. And we've seen lots of methodological problems. What anomalistic psychology does is it does not try and explain phenomena like psi phenomena in terms of psi. It rather says, like, okay, people have these anomalous experiences that are out of the ordinary. And what we should be doing is trying to explain them, not waving them away. Like if someone says, I had a dream where so-and-so died, and then I woke up and I got a call and so-and-so was dead. Those experiences happen, right? According to the math in the UK, that happens to one person every 2 weeks, right? So those experiences happen. But what's the best explanation? Is it something paranormal, or is it something that doesn't violate the principles of naturalism? An anomalistic psychologist would say, okay, you had this experience, but we need to explain it naturalistically. We don't want our explanation to violate the assumptions of naturalism. Sometimes that means that something is going to be explained away. In the case of the dream of someone dying and then getting news that they've died, you'd be like explaining that away. Like, well, statistically speaking, what happened to you is not as unlikely as you think. So it's certainly more likely to happen to you than you are likely to win the lottery or something like that. So just think of it that way.
There's a simulator out there for, I'm kind of going off topic with the lottery, and it's ridiculous how many lifetimes you'd have to go through before you
Yeah.
have a chance if you use the same numbers. But
those people, yeah, like the people that play the lottery and they're like, I'm gonna win it big this time. I'm just like, take your money and save it instead of buying lottery tickets, and put it in something with some compound interest or something, and you'll have a nice chunk of change in a few years, right? Like, don't waste your money on the lottery. I remember my home, like right up in the boonies where I'm from, when I was a garbage man. I used to be a garbage man. It was fun.
was this during the Tim Hortons days or after?
This was before.
Okay.
This was before. And there was an old man who would always, I would get dropped off at the general store, and then like my mom would pick me up or something after my shift. And there was this old man who was always there playing the scratch cards. And one day he won like $50,000 on a bingo card, and it made the local paper. And I'm like, but how much has this guy spent on these cards? Certainly more than 50,000 over. Because he said in the newspaper, yeah, I've been playing the bingo for like 50 years. And I'm like, you've definitely spent more than $50,000 on bingo. Like, absolutely. So that's the lottery. Don't do that. But I'll have to try that simulator. Maybe you could drop that in the Discord server too, because that'd be fun to play. But yeah, so that's what anomalistic psychology is all about. And the paper that we're going to read is by Jones and Zusne. And they'll talk about how we ought to go about teaching this stuff. And they do a little study in this paper where they examine belief change in their students. So they weren't doing philosophy, they were doing psychology. But it was their class was very much this kind of class, right? And they examine belief change and talk about the ethics of belief change. So we'll use this opportunity to understand the differences between parapsychology and anomalistic psychology. That'll be a great segue into week 7, where we're just going to have 2 seminars. We're going to have a discussion, a free-form discussion of the ethics of belief and belief change. So like, I'm a skeptic. Should I change your beliefs if you believe in the paranormal? What about if you're religious? What about if your religion is like so important to you and you're in a religious minority that's been persecuted? Should I try and change your religion? Probably not. But should I try and make you not spend money on, flim-flam gadgets like those Q-ray bracelets you used to see a few years ago, right? Anybody remember those? It was like a little copper bracelet you'd put on, and it was like, oh, it'll help with pain, arthritis, joint pain, inflammation, it'll help. I'm like, this is so stupid. It's just a piece of wire, like, and it costs like $12, and they're selling them at pharmacies, for goodness sake. You
like
know?
ionized charged metals, and they had like all this terminology behind it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
remember that, yeah.
Okay, first of all, anything with a charge, I'm no electrician or anything, but anything with a charge, like you're human, you're mostly water, and you're also always on the ground. So any charge is just going to go through you into the ground and not do anything. So, yeah. So we're going to try and find out, where's that line, right? Where is that line? If you're coming and taking a class and you believe in astrology, I think it's okay for me to say, well, consider this, astrology may not work. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But even either way, the placebo effect is usually short-lived, right? So even if you know it's a placebo, you take it, you may still feel better, but that effect won't last, right? So yeah, the ethics of belief and belief change. I think it's probably okay for that I try and change your beliefs on some things, because after all, that's what university is for. You're going there to get new knowledge, and knowledge is a justified true belief. So of course I can change some of your beliefs, but there's some beliefs that I don't want to change, right? You know, if your religion is very important to you, then you know, there's ways you can have that, but not be taken in by flim flam. And this will be fun, the importance of skepticism, which we're actually doing first. We're going to read some Descartes and we're going to read some Carl Sagan, and we're just going to discuss. So I think it's going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the class, as long as I don't get sicker. So thanks everybody for sticking with me today. And for everyone who's sick in the class, I hope you guys feel better soon. For the people that aren't sick, I hope you don't get sick, because it's not fun. And yeah,
Such a sick class.
It is a sick class, like so sick, bro. Like, but not in a sick way. So I'm gonna go and rest and try and recover, and I should have the quiz up for Friday, and I'll get to work on the other stuff with Jenna, get that done, and I'll see you Tuesday. So everybody have a good weekend and stay safe, okay? Don't forget, wear masks. Like, everybody's not wearing masks, but it's probably a good, yeah, smart. Get one of those good ones, KN95. Yeah. Don't be like me and get complacent, because who knows, if I was masking more, I might not have this. So thanks everybody. Actually, this helped me feel a little bit better, so I thank you all for being here.
Oh, glad. Yeah, feel better, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Feel better.
I will try. Yeah, where'd the chat go? Okay, yes, everybody. Okay, I'm now that I gotta go. My brain's run out of brain.
Okay.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. End transmission.